Welcome to 2025. It seems like forever ago that we were on the other side of this, thinking about what we were going to present um, in January of 2025 and kind of launch the new year with the program. And now that we're here, I can't believe it happened so quickly. So, well, the main thing we wanted to talk about tonight is our collaboration with the Brain and Behavior Foundation. On the screen, you'll see the mission statement for the Brain and Behavior Foundation, and we had hoped to have some of the board members here, but we just were not able to arrange that between their schedule and the holidays and how quickly this came up in the new year. So, with any luck, at a future functional forum, we'll be able to have some of the board members here to kind of participate in the forums, introduce themselves to our community. But we want to thank them for the work that they do in fundraising, in supporting neurotherapy, in helping to administer the grants. And we look forward to being able to introduce you to those folks as we're able to. But what's happened with, we've had a passion of being able to find ways that we could make more access, create more access for people to do neurotherapy. And, in that process of contemplating how Fran and I and Bhakti Brain Health Clinic as a collective could do that, we connected with Brain and Behavior Foundation and the option for grants, and to be able to offer grants through BBHC is really what is allowing us to bring forth at least this part of our own mission of being able to create more access to neurotherapy for folks. And so, part of their passion, our passion is really about the brain and increasing the public awareness of the brain's role in, we talk about mental health, and part of our conversation, Fran and I's conversation, has been how to navigate this space between kind of the traditional understanding of mental health and what's emerging in, more of this is not an unfamiliar term, kind of biopsychosocial. But even though that term has been around for quite a while, within mental health, there's just a sense of just even if it's not defined, there's just a sense of what mental health is, what it means, and then a whole collection of things that fit under that umbrella. And one of the things that we're excited about that we feel is happening is this movement to take some of the pressure off of the mind, in a sense, to understand the brain and its role that it plays, but also the body. So there's this movement that is a physiological approach to mental health, the place where we hang out, kind of the brain and its relationship to mental health. And then, of course, the whole area of mental health in and of itself. So, kind of navigating that territory, but a place of synergy between Brain and Behavior Foundation and Bhakti Brain Health Clinic is this idea of really putting forward a treatment of the organ, so the brain as an organ, and treating the brain directly. And, I think part of the conversation, moving this conversation forward is in part taking away some of the stigma that exists around mental health and people's sense that there's something wrong with them. And we certainly see it when we talk to people about doing neuroimaging, and they're thinking about coming in to have an imaging of their brain and what that's going to say, in a way that they don't have if they're going to go in and have, imaging done of their kidney. There isn't, this is like my kidney, but it's not me. And there's something about when we image the brain, people still have that sense of that's me. And I think one of the things that we look forward to is a time when we don't have that association, where the brain can really be treated as another organ. It's an important organ, but I think there's value in kind of lowering its status so that we can be simpler about addressing and treating the brain and just saying, oh, like again, if I've got a bad knee, I don't necessarily saying, oh, I've got, I got a trick knee from high school football. Well, when can we say that about our brain, right? I got this trick brain from high school football because that's probably actually more true than the number of bad knees from high school football. Um, so there's a great synergy and just perspective and this opportunity to move forward the conversation about neurotherapy and where it fits in. And so maybe we'll move into a little description of the grant program itself. So, Fran.
Sure. So the medical grant program is kind of a sort of a tiered approach. There are four different categories of grant, and they're up here on the screen for you. And each one of them is just providing a certain dollar amount or percentage of what it would take for somebody to be able to do a full round of neurotherapy. So typically that is around $5,000 and includes a quantitative EEG, a brain mapping, and then 40 sessions of neurotherapy, which might be neurofeedback, neurostimulation, a combination of those two. And so the grants that come through the foundation are what you see up here. And so there are limits to how many 100% grants, 75% grants. Much of that is based on funds that are available at the time. But this kind of gives you an idea of, so for example, if somebody were going to get a 50% grant, that somebody is going to pay $2,500 for their, what would normally be $5,000 that would be coming out of their pocket. And so it offers pretty significant increases in access for people who would not otherwise have the means to be able to fund their training. So when we look at this, we look at people that have exhausted other financial resources that they might have and find themselves in a spot where they're not able to pay for this therapy that would be very beneficial for them.
And then maybe we'll say a little bit more about, I think you hinted about it. So whether it's BBHC directly, taking in applications for the grant, the foundation itself can take applications. The foundation and BBHC will be working with other organizations to empower them to be able to give grants as well. So that could be somebody like Prairie Care, it could be an individual school, it could be all the way down to an individual teacher or an individual therapist. So the goal is to build a community that is aware of the grant program and is looking around in their environment to see who is a good candidate for that for the grant program for neurotherapy, and then to help that person become aware of it and then apply for it and move through the process. So right now we're the ones that we know about is us. Like we're going to be offering the grants, but we hope to grow a community of organizations and individuals who are empowered to offer the grants to people in their sphere. So a number of layers to it. And then we should also probably say that as well as offering the grants, there's also the fundraising side.
Yeah.
And so the Brain and Behavior Foundation, they're the fundraising side. So they're doing what they do to raise monies. But also, we want to encourage our community, so our client base, all the people we contact, to consider making a donation to the Brain and Behavior Foundation to help make more grants available. And so there is both sides to it, and their website has a pretty good amount of information about the the donation process, kind of the why, where the money goes, how the impact of those donations affect individuals, families, community. I think they've made a pretty good uh, presentation of the value of the donation. And the nice thing is one of those places where like 100% of the donation goes straight to the person receiving it. And I think that's a good sign of a proper charity when that's the case. So again, just and so the other point I wanted to make was, there will be more 25% grants available than 50%, and more 50 than 75, and more 75 than 100. And so in terms of being able to fulfill, as you said, Fran, it's total dollars available, but obviously we can make more of the 25% grants available than we can as we go up the value of the grant. So
well, then the exciting piece about that is it just increases the number of people that have access to it, right? Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
So talk a little bit with you about the eligibility criteria here. So what the people that we're looking for to be recipients of the grant are people who will have demonstrated that they have some challenges that they believe are arising from brain, like less than optimal brain regulation. And so most people think about that in terms of their mental health. But as Guy said earlier, we really look at it as we kind of changing the way we view this and looking at it as brain health. And so anybody who feels like they have that kind of dysregulation that's impairing their ability to perform in work, school, in their relational areas of life, their social areas, those are the people that will be have eligibility, will meet that part of the eligibility criteria. So it might be somebody who just self-identifies that way. It could also be that there's a provider who, has identified that and believes that you have a client that would benefit and meets this criteria. And then they also need to demonstrate an inability to pay for the neurotherapy services on their own. And that includes in giving us information about the resources that they've tried to access and have exhausted for whatever reason. And then we also they will need to be able to commit to the treatment. So an average round of neurotherapy is about 20 weeks of training. And so it's 2 days a week for an hour, 20 weeks worth of training. And so that's a pretty significant time commitment. And so the individual will be needing to be able to commit to a consistent training. We can't have somebody who's kind of in and out of training. That's not the way to optimize neurotherapy. And it also would be somebody, will that want to know that they're able to access transportation on a consistent basis as well. So anybody who feels like they meet this criteria, or again, like I said, if there's a provider who thinks that they have somebody who meets this criteria, these are the folks that we want and encourage to fill out an application for the grant. Anything else you want to say about that before I move on?
Not really. I think that piece about the capacity is a very important part of the process. And I mean, we recently had an experience of somebody who was early in the program, but then has been in kind of moving through kind of inpatient, outpatient care, and has had to go back into inpatient care, and then that disrupts the neurotherapy. And those moments arise, but we wouldn't want to start there with somebody knowing that they really aren't going to be able to do the process the way the process needs to be done. And I mean, there is flexibility in how a person goes through the neurotherapy process. And so there is the ability to flex with people's schedules and all that. But we definitely we want to stay away from those folks who just can't do the program. And good amount of that, not that those folks don't need care, but we want to be sensitive to how the funds are used and not take, a precious resource and use it where that person really isn't going to get the benefit, like the donations, the money from the Brain and Behavior Foundation, like money will be utilized, but the therapy won't be completed. And so that's to me that's an important part of the program, that we kind of put some parameters around so that we really do have the outcome that we want, which is the people who go through the program maximally benefit from the opportunity. And so that just to me is just an important piece of the criteria.
Yeah. And certainly if somebody is going through an inpatient process and they get to a point where they've stabilized and have been out of inpatient for a while, those are people we would encourage to apply. But because of the nature of neurotherapy, it really does need to have that consistency. So let's talk a little bit about the application process. The process is really pretty simple. You'll see up here on the screen that there are 3 ways for somebody to submit an application or an interest in application. The first up here is our email address, the neurofeedback at bhakticlinic.com. That's our company email. And if somebody has an interest as an individual, or if as a provider you have somebody you either want to kind of nominate for this or questions that you might have about the application process, you can certainly email our email, and we'll return the email to you promptly. And then the 2 websites that you see listed up on the screen, the first one is Bhakti Brain Health Clinic. So we have a web page specifically for this grant that has where you can actually submit the grant on the web page. And so that is one option. And the Brain and Behavior Foundation has on their website a page, a space for you to be able to submit the grant as well. And so it gives you 3 different options in terms of how you might go through this process. The application can be initiated either by an individual or by a member of their provider team. So it might be a therapist, it might be a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, somebody in OT. Anybody that thinks that they have a client that would benefit from this is welcome to start that process. And then the application process, once you get into it, will kind of walk you through the information that we're looking for. We do want you to note that it's pretty optimal to include initially some of the information like documentation of some kind of diagnosis or information that gives us some indication of where this person is experiencing difficulty. If there's any kind of treatment plan in place, we would like to know what that is. That includes, medication, support groups, any other types of therapy that might be going on, and then any financial information that will give us enough information to show that they are unable to pay for services on their own. If it is an individual that submits the application, we will ask you to write a 500-word summary, just basically in your own words, telling us why you think you're a good candidate for this grant, including kind of what it is you've been struggling with, how it is that you've tried to access resources, and where you've kind of bumped into trouble with that. And then we have a review committee of dedicated individuals who are going to look through. We have predetermined criteria that we use to determine who will who will receive the grant funding that we have available, so that we can provide kind of a really fair and transparent process.
Yeah, just a little thought around, like when you talk about diagnosis, to just say that, I mean, I think it would be easy to connect and that to like a mental health diagnosis, and by no means is that necessary. And so if there isn't, diagnosis, which could include something like, Parkinson's. It could be mild
TBI.
cognitive decline. It could be a TBI. It could be, so any of those.
Yep.
And then if it's not that, it might just be, a report coming from the school around learning disabilities, or so we wanted to put diagnosis kind of in quotes. And again, not to be too literal, or to make anybody think that this is going to be constrained by a mental health diagnosis. Yeah, no, we think that at all. And then also say, I thinking about like the 500 word summary. I mean, in all the times that we've talked about it in our process, it really isn't until sitting here now listening to this, where I'm going, that could be a bit of a hurdle for some of our people. So we might need to have options for how folks are able to do that, whether it's submitting like a video or something, of that nature. Because again, we want to keep in mind, if we're dealing with, say, something like brain injury, writing a 500-page paper or 500 word summary might actually be challenging for that person, and we would not want that person to be excluded because of that. So we want to hold all of that softly in terms of the criteria. Yeah.
And so I think, like, if you have questions around that, that's where you contact us at our at our email address, right? To ask the question, this person has this kind of thing. Can they provide this as a way of kind of demonstrating need, that kind of thing? We're very open to those.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The goal really is to get the grants in the hands of people who need it to help improve lives. That's our goal. Yeah.
Maybe open to questions at this point.
So I think what we'll do here is stop the share.
So CJ, are we able to get our questions answered personally, not in a shared chat? So CJ, what I would say is couple of options that way. Either that the email address that the neurofeedback at bhakticlinic.com, or if you wanted to, you could you could go to our website, schedule a 30-minute virtual consult. It's complimentary, and that's a place where you could have it be private and get all of the questions you might have answered in that way.
Those consults are with Fran or I.
Yeah.
So that's who you would be talking to. Great place.
Yeah.
I have a question. This is Maida. So if I'm thinking, I work across the street at Valor Clinic. I'm thinking of some clients that I potentially have. I know I've given the brochures to a lot of parents. So if parents have a lot going on. So if I was the one that maybe, could you say clinicians can go and start it? How would that be where they complete it? Like, would they get like an alert? Like, how would I have to tell them? Like, how would that work?
Yeah, so right now the application process is fairly low tech. It's basically the application processes online are really just like sending us an email. So you could we'd have to keep in mind, obviously, confidentiality and trust on your part that you're communicating what you can communicate to us. And through that process, it could turn into a phone call between you and us to decide what is the best approach given an individual or a family. Again, we have our free consult. That can be a way to do it. So I think we can really handle it like individual by individual for how to move from, hey, there's somebody I think would qualify for this, to bringing that into relationship with the person and the family. So, but the direct email to the neurofeedback or the forms on either one of the websites is a great place to start that conversation. And so I'm going to pause there. Does that sound like I'm answering your question or not so much?
Kind of.
Yep. Yeah. So say a little bit more.
Well, I was thinking like I would go on and start it for maybe some parents, but then I just didn't know like because I'm like visual, so what that would look like handing it off to them
Yeah.
or so they can complete it because I wouldn't do the whole thing, correct?
Well, so again, right now, the application process is really just kind of name, contact information, and a little bit of a description of the situation. That's the
Okay.
start. And so that's it. So it's not like an online intake form, 48 question that you could say fill out the first 10 questions, save it, and then let the family pick up from there. It's not that elaborate
Okay.
yet. And I hope we
Yeah.
don't get there. Like we really want to
Yeah.
keep it kind of that simple
Yep.
that people can just name, contact, here's my story, and then we take the next step from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Jill is asking what types of funding resources would be examples of those that would need to be exhausted before applying? Yeah. So I would say a couple of thoughts or things about that. We would like to see that somebody can demonstrate to us financial need. And so, I think about what are the ways that I might go about getting some care if I needed it and I didn't have all of the money in my bank account. And so it might be that that somebody shares with us or lets us know that they have checked with some family members or, friends or that kind of thing. They're kind of net, right, of support and don't have any access to it that way. Certainly if sometimes people will be on county funding, but they can't get access through waivers for some reason or another. But that would be a reason or a thing we would, be interested in knowing that they have tried to go that route as well. What am I missing?
So there may or may not be insurance,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right? And so a person could have insurance, but maybe they're like, so for us, any treatment covered by health insurance is out of network coverage. So they may have a policy that just has none or has a $20,000 deductible or something, right? So it's unattainable. Or they don't have insurance, or they have insurance, but they have insurances that just explicitly don't allow it. So those are the kinds of things that we would want to look at from that side to just kind of tick down the list of, one, do you have these resources? Yes, no. If no, great. If it's just no, 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 that's easy. But on some of them, it might be yes. Okay. Maybe a person has a disability status, has access to county funds, but there's some terminal point in there because of the nature of their waiver or how much has been used on their waiver. That's the process. I know that it's not quite nailed down as maybe as cleanly and neatly, but that's what we'd be looking at. Unfortunately, there aren't that many ways to have what we do paid for. So that's unfortunate for the community because there aren't ways to have this paid for. From our side, it makes the list of resources that a person has to exhaust short because there aren't that many resources. But again, we've had these situations where people will come in and they start off thinking that they're going to have to pay cash, and then we ask some questions, and it turns out that they do have a county waiver and that they have the right kind of county waiver, and we're able to find the path and navigate to funding through that. Great. They're happy, we're happy, we move forward. So that's what we would do with people is not so much as a way to just disqualify from the program, but it would be using our knowledge of all of the ways we've been able to help somebody get funding besides the grant. If they have any of those, we would help them do that. And in that process, we would also realize that they don't have any, and now the grant, becomes a possibility. Like so many things that turn insurance and then forms of funding, there are no clear answers, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So,
So, Jill, it sounds like that was helpful and answered your questions, so that's great. CJ, I'm going to go with your second question first, and then the first one. So, you said I've called in the past. You didn't take my insurance. Have you changed taking insurance? So, hopefully, what Guy just shared about insurance has answers that for you. We don't do in-network insurance, so we're looking. It's out of network, and so technically, we don't take any insurance because we're not in network with insurance companies, but certainly we'll be happy to provide super bills. We do that on a monthly basis for clients who are able to utilize out of network benefit.
Mine does not. I'm only covered by in-network.
only by,
Yep. So that's one of those, so that would be a question we would ask, and that would be information you would provide to us that would let us know that you have tried that route, right?
Yeah, and it's worth saying, talking about insurance is, and I'm going to forget which company, but I think you know what I'm talking about, that has now articulated all of the things that don't qualify. And they pretty
Yes.
much went down the list of everything we do.
Yeah.
And not to imply that they were picking on us, but they were picking on the profession, but they were very specific about what they don't cover. And it's everything we do. So insurance is clamping down more and more, making it harder and harder for people to access what we do through insurance in network or out of network. Like they're really making it difficult. And again, I mean, that's unfortunate because we'd like to see the opposite. We would like to see insurance company embracing neurotherapy as a path to health and well-being, and making it easier for people to qualify and get access to care, but they're doing the opposite. And so from a grant standpoint, like that's helpful because insurance is becoming less and less an option for what we do.
Does that clear that up for you, CJ?
Yeah, and then my insurance actually does cover neurofeedback. I've had brain neurofeedback before. Matter of fact, at Park Nicollet, unfortunately, their technician had to leave and they never replaced him.
Yeah.
I've tried other places and they just were not real good. But
Yeah.
to be covered, one, you have to be in network.
In network, yeah.
And
Yeah.
two, like the QEEG, but still, it doesn't matter if you're not in network, they won't cover anything.
Right. Yeah, and unfortunately with health partners, that means literally in a health partner's employee to be in network. So they're pretty strict about that.
How about John up on France?
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know, CJ, if you have tried, if you've checked with John Nash. If you Google if you Google John Nash neurotherapy so that you don't get the other John Nash that A Brilliant Mind was about. If you do that, John, his clinic, I do believe they take insurance, but again, I don't know that he's going to be health, I can't guarantee that he's health partners because health partners has gotten really, really strict about it. But you could check with him to see if he is in network with health partners. And he's very, very good. He does pretty much the same kind of neurofeedback that we would do. He does not do neurostimulation, I don't think, but does neurofeedback as well. But yeah.
What I do is I go to the site because there's actually a site that represents people who do these things, right?
Yep.
And that's the quickest way for me is just to filter out anybody who doesn't take my insurance. And then the second step is who's close to me, being that I live in Edina.
Yeah. John is right in Edina too. So
so he doesn't take my insurance per my investigation so far, but I appreciate it.
Yeah. Your other question, CJ, was about is one of those three ways of applying better than the other? And I would say no. I think
email is probably just the most direct.
Email will get to us the quickest probably.
Yeah, doesn't have to loop through the website and whatnot. Just email to
Okay,
the
and then with
neurotherapy.
that, then because so if I have to submit a 500 word thing, which I don't know I'd have a problem with, but or are you saying it'd be easier for my counselor to submit for me?
Um, uh, no,
Or
I
just
think
include her
no,
letter?
you could submit it that,
Yeah.
my preference, as one of the committee members always is, I'd like to hear from you. Certainly whatever your, counselor or therapist has to say is valuable, but I would much rather hear it in your words. That holds more value for me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then Maeda, you're asking, I love this question. How long do you have? You're asking, why do you think insurance is doing that? Because neurofeedback is evidence-based. Um, yeah, yes, it is. And it's a really good question. And, I think we all have our own ideas about why insurance is doing that. Um, the neurofeedback um, group as a whole in the United States does not have a strong lobby power. And so that might make some difference in terms of insurance processes. And just, there's a lot of bureaucracy. It's the same reason that like insurances have cracked down on like health partners no longer will pay out of pocket or pay for like ketamine for many of their patients anymore. They used to pay for it and suddenly they don't. So, I don't know. It's
Yeah, and a couple things to add.
Yeah.
So we had again, I forgot which company announced it, but that they were going to limit the pay, like the coverage for anesthesia, right? Yeah, Blue Cross, right?
Yeah.
And so you just, I mean, you just have to shake your head and just say, well, what do you can't wake somebody up in the middle of their surgery and say, can I have your credit card, or else you're going to have to rough it for the rest of this. But I mean, we all know that that's the game they play. The other piece that I'll say that I think is legitimate from the insurance company standpoint is, saying neurofeedback is a little bit like saying pill, right? And we all want to think like if you walk into a pharmacy, it's full of pills, but there are all kinds of pills, and not all of them are helpful. And the same is true for neurofeedback. There are hundreds of different kinds of modalities that fit under the umbrella of neurofeedback. And I can clearly see that an insurance company doesn't want to deal with that profession until that profession sorts itself out, right? Like they'll cover pharmaceuticals, but they don't cover pills, right? And so until the neurofeedback world can segment itself, and again, similar, just use the metaphor of pharmaceutical companies to say these are the forms of neurofeedback that are evidence-based and we can show efficacy for, then we would of course want them to cover that. But as long as neurofeedback is really this unregulated, open, anybody with a couple of wires and a box can say neurofeedback, it's not surprising to me that they don't want to get involved in that. Yeah. So I mean, they're going to kind of force our profession to grow up.
Yeah, and there is an organization, a national organization. It's ISNR. This is one of their one of the things that they work on a yearly basis. They have a committee that is, working on trying to get this more legitimized in the eyes of the insurance companies. So it's not like they're not trying. It's just they haven't been as and honestly, and I think most would admit this too, they've not been well organized because they've been busy either doing the research or doing the work of it and haven't, been as organized perhaps as like a pharmaceutical company is or the pharmaceutical industry as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there more questions in our chat? No. So great questions, and thank you everybody for sending those in. And again, if there are more lingering, please ask. And if not, then we can wrap things up. But certainly happy to answer your questions. Okay. Great. So, like, we would like to invite any of you that are listening, or all of you, to apply. And then, as much as that, certainly talk to people in your sphere, tell them about the grant program, but also talk to people about the Brain and Behavior Foundation, and encourage people to donate. Like, maybe we could ask is, like, for every person that you mention the grant to, talk to 2 people about donating, because that's what it's going to take to keep the funds there. Is the Brain and Behavior Foundation needs to have the funds coming in to be able to keep giving the grants out. So please take both sides of that into your world and share it with people, and that would be greatly appreciated on our part. I'd say we're excited
Yes.
to like, have our first grantee. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yep.
So thank you, everybody. It was a delight chatting with you, answering your questions, and just having an opportunity to kind of launch this program.